podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Tuesday, August 6th. I hope everyone is well. Yes, I am still in Spain. And so this show, of course, was pre-recorded a little bit earlier than you're seeing it at 10 p.m. live, because or else it would be 4 o'clock in the morning for me. And I need to get my beauty sleep because, as you can see, I definitely need it. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. The Sick Podcast is also brought to you by Bittt Tibi. They launched their new Ultra Lager. I've been talking to you about it. It's become extremely popular. It's a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for the hot summer days that we've had, with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can. It's available in a pack of 6 of 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and, to say the least, it is ultra refreshing. Also brought to you in part by Playground. Discover a world of luxury at Playground. Explore their 30,000 square foot expansion with thrilling games, gourmet dining, and live entertainment, located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground, experience the strip without the trip. Without further ado, I bring in from Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. He's usually a regular on Mondays throughout the hockey season, but of course in the summer things change, you know. He's got something to do. I got something to do. And who knows, maybe he was on the golf course yesterday, or maybe even celebrating his 2-year anniversary with the love of his life. Let's bring him in. Eric Engels, how are you?
I'm good, Tony. You do look like you got your beauty rest.
Thank you. The things that you find out on social media, right? The happy anniversary to you.
Thank you.
And the lovely Emily. And it looks like you two are an extremely happy couple. I'm happy to hear that. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
I want to talk to you about Patrick Laine. For some, it's probably becoming, I don't know, redundant. And, you know, at one point, Trevor Zegras, we talked about him. Could he be a possible candidate of joining the Canadiens? We know the Canadiens are looking for a player on their second line. On another occasion, we talked about, Martin Necas, and Zegras hasn't moved. Necas was Neches, I should say. That's a correct pronunciation, I was told. Got a contract extension. So now, la rumeur du jour or la rumeur du mois, the rumor of the day or the rumor of the month has been Patrick Laine. We've been hearing a bunch of things, like he was spotted at the airport and all that stuff, and in Montreal, and whether that's true or not, who knows? Only he knows. I weighed in on it with Grant McCagg a little while ago. I know that Matt O'Han weighed in on it with Stu Cowan a couple of days ago. I'll weigh in it with you. Everyone knows his story by now. He's a former second pick overall in the draft. At one point, there was a legitimate debate, or there was a debate between him and Austin Matthews, who was going to go number 1. He ends up going number 2, and ends up going number 2 to Winnipeg. Puts up some really good goal-scoring seasons. He's a big man. He can shoot the puck. He's lethal on a one-timer, especially on the power play. But unfortunately, he entered the Players Assistance Program last year, which is always a red flag for everyone, because some, unfortunately, aren't able to fix whatever is wrong. And let's hope for him that he will be able to. But when a player goes through something like that, their value is probably the lowest that it's ever been. And you probably would have never imagined getting a player for a value that low. And I don't know what his value is or it isn't, but I think it's logical to say that it's probably its lowest now that it ever has been. Do you believe that there is any kind of interest from the Canadiens towards Patrick Laine?
I'd say it's quite minimal. I've obviously poked around on this. I'm kind of laughing because, Twitter has this new For You feature that unfortunately puts you in that box right away where you have to go to the people you're following. And stuff that's been pushed to me over the last couple of months, or at least couple of weeks actually, intensely, is a couple of people saying, the Canadiens are front runners for Patrick Laine, and it's just like I'm sitting back laughing because I'm not really working right now. I'm not gonna go after that. But at the end of the day, let's be real about this situation. Patrick Laine is on the market for a reason. It's not just because of the players' assistance program, which he's come out of, and now teams have the opportunity to speak to him, speak to his agent, find out where he's at mentally, physically. His play on the ice, aside from putting up good goal numbers, which obviously have diminished over the last couple of years, it just has been lacking in different departments. He wants a new start. I can understand that. Would he be willing to accept it anywhere? We'll find out. He's got a 9 or 10 team no trade clause in his contract. As far as Montreal is concerned, I wonder, would he want to jump out of the players assistance program and into this type of spotlight? I don't know. It depends how many teams are willing to give him an opportunity. And I don't know that the Montreal Canadiens are one of them. They feel they have an extremely healthy room. Whether or not they'd want to incorporate somebody like him and what he's coming with into it at this juncture of their development is a question. I understand a lot of people look at it and say, okay, here's the potential of the player and the Canadiens need scoring. But he also comes with a $8.7 million cap charge and a $9.1 million actual salary. And if the Canadiens were to even consider taking on the full weight of that, which they could do based on their cap situation, you would think that would be coming, if you see the way Kent Hughes has been operating for the last few years, with a cost to Columbus, not a benefit. I don't think they're offering up all kinds of packages to get him and leading the race, quote unquote. I really think it's a real long shot. If the Canadiens are able to take on Laine and get an asset with him, maybe this becomes something that down the line could happen, but I think it's highly unlikely, Tony.
Well, let's just talk financials first, right? It's a significant price tag, like you just mentioned. And so there's two ways you can make something happen. Let's be honest. Almost every team is every time they get a big salary back, they're trying to unload a big salary in return, or they're trying to look for the other team to pay a portion of the salary. And it's the only way it can happen, right? I don't see the Montreal Canadiens. Let's just say they were interested in Patrick Laine, right? They're not giving up a couple of draft picks and a couple of prospects who don't make any money. They're going to have to shed some salary, don't you think?
Yes, but let's look at it from Columbus's end. What's the best deal for Don Waddell? It's the one where all of Laine's salary ends up off his books, right?
For sure.
That would be the best case scenario for him. How many teams could potentially do that with him? Not a lot. And anybody that I think would consider it, like I said, would be looking for a sweetener in the deal.
Yeah. And they've also been in a rebuild, right? So you don't want to take on players with salary if you're in a rebuild. Exactly what you want to do is what you just mentioned, unless you want to accelerate the rebuild. I don't know where Columbus is in terms of their rebuild, but it's been clear.
I think they want to be competitive fast, and they have got a lot of young talent around there, but they also have some money they're paying out to guys like Johnny Gaudreau, and they would like to whip this thing around fast because it's been a difficult stance from them from a PR perspective, and they've got some favor to earn with fans who are actually quite dedicated to their team. And I think it'll be important to them to take a good step forward this year and rejig the narrative around them, which is not particularly positive in any way. It's changed a bit, obviously, with some changes happening in the front office, the coaching staff. Dean Evason is a good coach, and he's a hard driving coach, and I think that's what they need there. Don Waddell is a smart executive. But again, you talk about financials, you look at it from any team that might be potentially acquiring him. If they're, of course, they'd be looking to potentially shed salary or have Columbus eat some. And Columbus is going to be looking to get rid of that salary off the books, even if it costs them something, I think, in the end, because it's clear it's not going to be a marriage between Patrick Laine and Columbus moving forward. He's got to find a new home to play. I wish him well. I hope he's doing well. As far as Montreal is concerned, I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible. It's not going to happen. But I would be extremely surprised. And for the people who are out there telling fans, oh, they're the front runners and they're all over it, like it's not at all the case.
Yeah. Look, everyone loves the talent. I mean, a guy who scores 40 goals in this league and puts up the numbers that he's put up. Actually, why don't we bring up his hockey DB so we can show the numbers for those who are actually watching on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Patrick Laine put up 36 goals in his rookie season in 73 games in the 2016-17 season. He followed that up by 44 goals in 82 games, down to 30 goals in 82 games, 28 goals in 68 games. Then the year after that, from Winnipeg traded to Columbus. That year, a total of 12 goals in 46 games. The year after in Columbus, 26 in 56. Still not too shabby. The year after that, 22 in 55. He's dropping. And last year, 6 goals in 18 games.
Look, whenever
the numbers are impressive, right?
Whatever he's been dealing with, Tony, whatever he's been dealing with, it's obviously been a factor, whatever it is, physically, mentally, different factors in why his play hasn't been up to snuff over the last 4 years versus the first 4. But, there are other factors in terms of the way he looks on the ice, aside from when he's in a position to score a goal. And that's something that I think a lot of teams want to sort out for themselves if they're interested in the player. They want to speak to the player. They want to speak to the agent, and they want to do their own homework and match that against their own perceptions that they've built up over time. Because I tell you, there's no player hiding in the NHL from the other 31 teams. They know everything about these guys and what the habits are, and they've got a book that goes pretty long. A lot of people don't necessarily know what the scouts do when they're at every game, but they file a report after every game, and that report gets built on with several reports on specific players that they're watching. It's not, I think a lot of people think a scout shows up because there's a player that's available on the market and they want to go watch that player. No, the scout shows up with a list of players that he's going to watch on a nightly basis and fills out reports over a period of time so that when they get into a meeting pre-deadline, pre-free agency, whatever it is, with the GM, and a name comes up, they've got a file that's, this big on that player, that they know everything about that player. So, I hope for Patrick Laine he gets a fresh start somewhere and he comes back and he kills it. We'll see where it all goes, because as you just saw on that board, the diminishing numbers only tell part of the story. There's a lot more to it that would have a lot of teams concerned about paying him that type of money on his contract or giving something up for him on top of that.
You're basically saying that he's a blue line in player. And
that's what he's been. That's what he's been for the last couple of years. I can't, whether or not he remains that now that he's come out of the program, getting himself into a healthier mindset, getting himself into a healthier place physically. That's the question. Have there been changes there? And that's something that no matter who asks him that question, no matter who speaks to his agent, they're only really going to have answers when he gets on the ice and starts committing to their program. So knowing that,
for the sake of discussion and just playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, right?
Sure.
Marty St. Louis has tried to make Cole Caufield a much more complete player and a 200-foot player. And that was one of his objectives to start the season last year, or ever since he got here. And I think we see it happening in front of our very own eyes. Could probably want to do it with Laine. And like you said, it all depends on the willingness of the player. I mean, that's extremely important. The way you play hockey, I mean, the way you live life, the way you work, I mean, bad habits are hard to break. If he's been a blue line player, I mean, it explains one of the reasons why he's been able to score 30, 35, 40 goals, because obviously you cheat on the ice, you put yourself in positions to score, but, you probably end up being a liability sometimes too, because you're not covering. But it could be, just to play devil's advocate here, and for the sake of discussion, it could be a great project for Marty St. Louis.
I I like the point you're making, because if you were to bring me up any player who you would consider to be a project, I like his chances of success with Marty St. Louis as his coach, virtually almost anybody you can name in the league. I don't think of anybody as a project type of player that wouldn't have his best opportunity to redeem his career or find a new page, a new chapter to write, than with a coach like Marty St. Louis and with a staff like the Canadiens have that focus on that type of development, that make people believe that they're capable of growing in departments where they've been told in other places they'd never be able to grow. That's a conducive environment, and that's a huge check mark for the Canadiens that I think is going to play well in their favor as they continue to get more competitive and go after certain types of players. But everything has to be considered. One of the things I said off the top on this particular subject is how healthy the Montreal Canadiens room is right now. And I'm not saying that it's automatic that Patrick Laine comes in and he's a problem that you have to manage. We don't know. We don't know what the situation is, but I know that the Canadiens have to tread pretty carefully in terms of who they're going to incorporate into their. I think any team would, but considering that you may not put the Canadiens ahead of Ottawa or Buffalo or Detroit in terms of where they're at with their current roster, but I'd put them ahead of all three of those teams in terms of their culture. And that speaks to what you were just talking about, and that counterpoint that you just made about Marty St. Louis and empowering players to become more. But there's something internally there too with the players themselves and the commitments that they've made and the way they are together in their group, the cohesiveness there. You have to be very careful with that chemistry not to screw with it. And I think Canadiens know that.
I think the reason why you're getting a lot of it on your feet too, and a lot of people are bringing it up, is because it's well known that the Montreal Canadiens are looking for a player to put alongside Kirby Dach on that second line, right? And so it hasn't worked out with Zegras, who hasn't moved. It didn't work out with Neshes, who re-signed. And now you're looking for somebody, and then Laine's name comes up. Anyway, okay. We're hearing the Minnesota Wild are interested, by the way. That's the latest on the rumor mill, and we'll see.
That makes sense to me.
Why?
That makes sense to me.
Why?
You just look at a team that, you know, if they could have a little bit more scoring with Kaprizov there, with Boldy, with what they've got going, and kind of them being, they've kind of been stuck in this ground, right, with the dead cap money owed to Suter, Parise, and like they're kind of coming out of that phase. And, you know, it's a market that loves hockey that potentially reinvigorates Laine, and if they can make it work cap-wise and what they've got to move off their roster, like I think they've had a kind of quiet offseason also, right?
Yeah. That's an interesting answer though, Eric, but I could say the same thing for the Montreal Canadiens.
Right? I know
scoring. I think they scored 235 or 236 goals. It's not enough, and
I'm not debating it.
Reinvigorate players. Yeah.
I'm not debating it, but it's all a question of cost.
Yeah.
It's all a question of what are you gonna do for this player? Is Minnesota going to give up assets and take on the full cap hit? And no, like everybody, I think he'd already be moved by now.
Yeah, but I will say this:
even this shortly after coming out,
yeah,
teams know what's going on with Patrick Laine. Let's be honest, okay? They'll have their conversations with him
for sure.
They'll have the conversations with their agent, but they know.
Yeah,
and so like one of the reasons he probably hasn't moved yet is they're not necessarily willing to pay the price that Columbus is asking for a player that, you know, they're selling his potential. They're selling, he's in a great space. He's come out of it. Everybody else is kind of like, yeah, well, he makes 8.7 on the cap, 9.1 in actual salary, signing bonuses owed, and like he'd have to prove it to us, and we're just, you know, that's going to cost something for you.
Let's say this. No matter what has been plaguing him, whether stress, anxiety, depression, any kind of addiction, Montreal usually would not be a good fit. It's a very high pressure environment.
He might see it that way. He's got 9 or 10 teams that he could say, that's not going to be for me. That I can't do that. So we'll see. That also potentially limits the market and changes the way the exchange goes. You know, something you brought up something a few minutes ago that I would like to revisit, because I think it is something we were supposed to talk about today. And you talked about a winger next to Kirby Dach. And I've been thinking about this throughout, basically from the end of last season through the offseason, because I think a lot of people look at Slavkovsky and what was building with Slavkovsky and Kirby in training camp, last season before he got hurt in that second game. And you could see the potential of these two big guys playing kind of dominant roles next to each other. But I have to tell you, I really think Cole Caufield's an option. If you were to break up Montreal's top line, I think Cole Caufield next to Kirby would be a really interesting thing based on the chemistry we saw develop with Slafkovsky and Suzuki together. And to get Caufield a few more touches and a pure finisher next to Doc potentially balances the Canadiens' two lines if they're looking for that balanced look better than if you put Slafkovsky there at this point. Now, if you get Demidov in a year.
Well, I was going there. I mean, if Demidov was on this team and you want to say you want to put him with Suzuki and Slafkovsky, I understand. And then you put
in a year, it's a different. You can mix and match those pieces, however you want. It's going to end up looking pretty good. But just for now, if you're looking for that balance, I think a lot of people point to Slafkovsky immediately when they think of Doc. But I think it could free up Caufield and get him a few more touches and give Doc also a pure scorer to finish the plays that he makes. And Slafkovsky and Suzuki's chemistry wouldn't be affected. Newhook can play on either of those lines. Joshua Waugh can play on either of those lines. At times, as a fill-in capacity, Brendan Gallagher can play on either of those lines. There's things that you can do there. We'll see where it goes and how Marty sees it. And then we're talking about just in the if scenario that you're to break up Montreal's top line, because right now, if I were coaching the team and I were going into a new season, I would be rolling out Slafkovsky, Suzuki, and Caufield together and then seeing where to go from there.
Yeah.
But I do think it could be really interesting to see Caufield with Doc.
I am, if I'm not the president, I am the vice president of the Joshua Roy fan club, so I like him very much. I think it would be too much too soon, though, to have Joshua Roy playing with a Suzuki and a
We'll find out in camp. I'm not sure.
We'll find out where he is, yeah.
And one of the factors here, Tony, which can't be ignored, is having left-handed players in that top six. Right now, Slafkovsky's there. Suzuki's right-handed. Doc is right-handed. Caufield is right-handed. And having that lefty-righty combination is important in terms of finding players in their specific spots where they are successful and with what they do with the puck. And I'm telling you, Joshua Waugh is one of those options. Like he'll have to play his way into there, but he has the skill and the ability to play there. And I think the dedication also. It's really impressive to me. That's the thing that's impressed me most with Joshua Waugh since becoming drafted by the Canadiens, is how he has dedicated himself and done everything and more that's been asked of him in terms of his own development. Yeah. When Marc Bergevin used to say the player is most responsible for his own development, is always true, by the way. They did that era of Canadiens, they didn't do enough for the player's development to aid that process. But man, Joshua Waugh took his own development in his own hands, but also in combination with what the Canadiens have done for him. You're seeing a player emerge that has very much the potential to capitalize on the talent that he has. And we saw, when he played with Monahan last year, he was fantastic. Monahan leaves, he plays with Newhook, he was fantastic. He got hurt at the end of the year. But man, I think, can you imagine how much last year convinced Joshua Waugh that he can do this, that he can move his way up this lineup and really fulfill a role that's potentially higher than anybody would have pegged for him before he got drafted? Because I see it.
Yeah, look, I love the fact that it's almost a pretty courageous thing to say on a podcast covering the Montreal Canadiens to say put Caufield with the Doc at some point. Start with him and Suzuki and Slafkovsky, yes, but at some point he could be the guy for Kirby Doc, because look, Nick Suzuki is coming off a 33-goal, 77-point season. Cole Caufield is coming off of a 28-goal, 65-point season. Juraj Slafkovsky at the age of 19 is coming off a 20-goal, 30-assist, 50-point season. Let's bring up Caufield's stats, as a matter of fact, as hockey DB if we can.
As you do it, and as people look at this, Tony, I just want to make one point. Slafkovsky, when he joined Caufield and Suzuki, there was kind of a shift that happened, and it's just natural, and maybe it's in part due to Slafkovsky's left-handedness. But the dynamic between Suzuki and Slavkovsky that started to develop forced Caufield to change a little bit of what he was doing on that line. And
that's why I think his goals went down, Eric.
That's a part of it for sure. That's a part. He wasn't necessarily option A at every moment, right? Like you'd see them playing together at times with other wingers where like the puck was going between Suzuki and Caufield and not necessarily using the other guy as much, right? Now you see Caufield and Suzuki using Slavkovsky's size to their advantage to get into the spots where they're most successful, and all of a sudden everybody's getting a touch and everybody's in on the action. But Caufield is a guy to me that like he needs to get his touches in those areas where he can get a shot off. And when the options change around that because of the chemistry that developed between Slavkovsky and Suzuki, and also Slavkovsky and Caufield, like it's not. I think they can work beautifully together as a line. That's proven in the numbers, right? I think 5-on-5 expected goals, they were somewhere in the top 5 for most of the second half of the season, and in actual production, they were I think top 12 or something like that. So there's a lot of good there already. But I think if you're to spread it out, I think if you're looking for balance when you're playing different teams, you're on the road and you need different matchups to be available to you. I really love the idea of a guy like Doc and the way he drives his line, finding a finisher like Caufield on his line. And if you have a guy like Roy next to them or Newhook, who has great speed, they bring different elements. But Roy has a certain cerebral element to his game. He can finish plays and he can make them too. And he's not a liability defensively in any way. Like that is one thing you wouldn't say about him despite his age. And so I'm not saying Roy is guaranteed to be a top 6 forward, but the idea that he can fill in that position before Demidov comes and play, 30 to 50 games in that position this year, if they want to spread out their lineup and put Newhook down the middle. Yeah. I don't think anybody should be surprised if that ends up happening.
No. A shout out to Manta Sleep, by the way. Had a chance to pick one up before actually making my way to Spain. It's the only mask that's designed for the deepest possible sleep in any environment. It's basically, it's almost like a blindfold, but very cushiony, really comfortable, 100% blackout for a deeper sleep. It's adjustable for like a kind of personalized fit. Very comfortable. Once again, check out mantasleep.com. So much so that I used it the first night. I told my wife it was great. She took it. She never gave it back to me, and I need to get one myself. Probably now is a good time because if you use code SICKHABS, you get 10% off at mantasleep.com. All right. Okay.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Caufield, right? 82 games, 28 goals, 37 points, 37 assists, 65 points last year.
Yeah.
It's funny people called this a down year. It's shattered his career highs in terms of points.
Well, I said earlier, about 5 minutes ago, I said the way Caufield had to play on that line, the adjustment that was made, that's why his goals went down. But as you pointed out, it's the most goals that he's ever scored. But the reason why I said that is because the pace that he was on 1 year ago, or the year before, would have been a pace on an 82-game season where he probably would have scored 47 or 48.
Yeah.
He ended up scoring 28 in an 82-game season. There's a lot of players in the National Hockey League that would take that, but based on what we saw the year before, I think everyone expected 35.
So I have a question for you.
At least.
I agree. It's under what people expected. So therefore it's in this kind of narrative, right? But like at the end of the day, it's a 28-goal, 65-point season.
I think he had a good season.
Coming off shoulder surgery.
I think he had a good season. I think
So knowing what you know about the process that Cole Caufield is submitted to and the obvious signs that he showed of becoming a more complete player, like this was undeniable while the other narrative was happening. I don't know about his goal scoring and this and that. Like he was he was a much better player than he's ever been over a good portion of last season. There was parts where he struggled, but over a good portion of it, he was much more complete, much more capable of actually filling a top 6 role and not just being a scorer. Knowing all that, what do you think is going to happen with this player this year, whether he plays with Suzuki, whether he plays with Doc, whether he plays with both of them? Like where do you see this going from a production standpoint, and what do you think he's going to be this year?
35 plus 35.
So this is my question. If you see that, and I see that too, by the way, if it's 35 and 35, Would you prefer that over a guy who's going to score 46, but you can't put him out in the last 3 minutes of the game? You can't trot him out in certain situations where you're up by a goal. Like, you don't necessarily trust him defensively. Like, what would you?
I'm sure every coach would answer yes. And I'm sure a lot of fans would say, not a lot of players in the National Hockey League that score 46 goals. And at the price of admission, I wouldn't mind seeing that.
So here's my other question. We're saying 35-35, and we both agree. Like 35-35 is what to kind of expect from Caufield if it's a good season for him. Which, by the way, go down the list of the amount of players that score 35 goals and also have 35 assists. It's not a long list, okay? That is a very impressive season, even if the end number is 70, okay? What about the potential for the player to score more goals, though? Because I don't think that's gone from him. I think he can reach above that. I don't want to set the bar there for him, because if he has 35, that's a hell of a contribution already. Especially with the Canadiens having like not a full top six, right? Like there is not that insulation that a team that has a full top six that a player gets within that, right? And like what they're able to produce, because they're not the only matchup on a nightly basis or whatever it is. So keep that in mind. But I think he can score more than 35. I'm not going to put that at the bar, but
so do I. I would take that bet right now, make that bet right now, that at 1 year, at the very least in his career, Cole Caufield will have a 40-goal season. As a matter of fact, I might even go to 45. I'm going to be a little bit hesitant on the 50 because it's such a prestigious plateau, very, very difficult to obtain. It wouldn't surprise me if he hits it, but I would make the bet that at one point he will have 40. All right, so
I would say that if and when the Canadiens have a complete top six and he's right there in his prime, I wouldn't be extremely hesitant to bet on him scoring 50 goals. And I think a lot of people need to see it this year, because he only had 28. He only had 28 last year when a lot of people expected 40. I wouldn't worry about Cole Caufield's goal scoring ability. I'm telling you, I don't think he's lost any of it. And I would suggest that as early as this year, you're going to see more of it, because not only because of what's around him and how he's developed as a player, but he's now more than a year out from having that shoulder surgery. And there's going to be a level of confidence that's there that if he's healthy is going to help him do some of what he wasn't able to do last year, especially towards the beginning of the year.
Yeah, especially if Demidov ends up being the playmaker that a lot of people see in him, those who have been able to scout him. I mean, we're reading, we're here. A lot of people are saying maybe Demidov should be a centerman in the National Hockey League because he's such a good playmaker. Now, having said that, maybe they're right, but I will say this: there's a lot of great playmaking wingers in the National Hockey League. Nikita Kucherov is one. Patrick Kane was a tremendous playmaker in his best years, and he was a winger as well. So you can be a winger and be a playmaker. Eric, great stuff as always. I know people enjoyed it. Thanks for taking the time on once again a summer day. We'll talk to you soon, my man.
It's just, what a problem the Canadiens are developing. Where they'll have to choose where to put players, and that not like for 30 years not having enough centermen on your roster to be able to do anything.
That's a sign, like you said, that they're headed in the right direction, and they're becoming a team to contend with going forward. I'm really excited with what the next, I think the next 5 years are going to look like. I'm going to say 5. I think it could be more. I'm really excited what the next 5 or 6 years will look like for the Canadiens, and I could just imagine this podcast, I think, is going to be having a lot of fun in the next 5 or 6
We're
years.
Approaching the fun zone, no question.
We are.
Yeah,
The bad years are out of the way. We'll talk to you soon, Eric. Thanks so much.
See you, buddy.
All right. Special thanks to Energy Transportation Group, to Bittt, to Tibi, to Playground, and to Manta Sleep. Thanks very much to all of you for watching. If you like it, comment 6, share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love. For Shane Gameau and Master Control, I'm Marinaro, the Sick Podcast.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast. is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Bittt, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.